A routine pizza delivery to a billionaire CEO's penthouse. A single framed photo on her desk. His missing daughter, gone for 3 years. One shocking detail only a father could know. What deadly secret has the most powerful woman in tech been hiding? The rain-slicked streets of New Seattle gleamed under the perpetual glow of neon holograms and hovering advertisement drones as David maneuvered his battered electric scooter through the late-night traffic. It was just past midnight on a chilly February evening in 2026, and the city pulsed with the restless energy of a world that never truly slept. His delivery uniform, faded red polo with the faded quick slice pizza logo stitched crookedly over the pocket, was damp from the persistent drizzle, clinging uncomfortably to his shoulders. At 38, David carried the quiet wariness of a man who had spent the last 3 years piecing together a life from fragments, graveyard shifts, court papers, and the hollow ache of a daughter's empty bedroom back in his cramped apartment on the east side. Tonight's order had come through the app as a high-priority drop to the Glass Tower, Vance Tech's monolithic headquarters that rose like a blade of mirrored obsidian from the heart of the financial district. The building was legendary, not just for its architecture, but for the impenetrable fortress of AI security that guarded it. Most delivery drivers never made it past the lobby drones. Packages were collected at automated kiosks or ferried upward by internal bots. Yet this one insisted on a human handoff, penthouse level, direct to the executive suite. The tip promised was obscene, enough to cover rent and groceries for the month, so David hadn't hesitated. He needed the money more than he feared the cold scrutiny of machines. He parked the scooter in the designated rider zone beneath the tower's overhang, where biometric scanners immediately locked onto him. A soft chime sounded in his earpiece as the app confirmed identity. David Harlan, Citizen ID verified, no outstanding warrants, thermal signature nominal. The outer doors parted with a pneumatic sigh, revealing a cavernous lobby of polished black marble veined with veins of blue light. Hovering orbs the size of softballs drifted toward him, projecting holographic checklists. Pizza box dimensions confirmed, temperature within acceptable range, no prohibited substances detected. One orb lingered near his face, scanning retinas with a faint violet flash. Access granted, level 87, executive penthouse. Proceed to central lift. Deviation will result in immediate escort. David swallowed, adjusted the grip on the insulated carrier, and stepped forward. The central elevator was a transparent cylinder that rose through the tower's core like a glass vein. As the doors sealed, the city fell away beneath him in a dizzying rush of lights and rain-streaked windows. Floor numbers ticked upward and silent Arabic numerals projected on the wall. 40, 60, 80. The ride was eerily quiet, except for the low hum of magnetic propulsion and the occasional soft ping of system diagnostics. He caught his reflection in the glass, tired eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw, hair still dark but thinning at the temples, and forced himself to stand straighter. This was just another delivery. In, out, paycheck deposited by morning. At level 87, the doors opened onto a corridor of frosted glass panels that shifted opacity as he approached, guiding him forward like a living map. The air here smelled faintly of ozone and expensive cedar. No visible staff, only the whisper of climate control and the distant thrum of servers buried somewhere deep in the building's bones. At the end of the hall stood the AI receptionist station, a curved console of translucent alloy displaying a serene female avatar in soft blue light. "Welcome, delivery personnel. Please place the order in the secure receptacle for automated transfer." David hesitated. The app instructions were explicit, hand delivery required. "It says direct to recipient," he said aloud, voice sounding small in the vast space. The avatar tilted its head, eyes flickering. "Processing. Anomaly detected in authorization protocol. Human override requested. Stand by." A soft error tone chimed, then repeated. The console lights pulsed erratically, red warnings scrolling across the surface in looping code. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a mechanical click that echoed down the corridor, a hidden panel in the far wall slid open, revealing a set of double doors etched with the Vance Tech sigil, a stylized V encircled by orbiting data nodes. A calm, synthetic voice emanated from concealed speakers. Direct interface authorized due to system recalibration. Proceed to Executive Suite. CEO Elena Vance will receive the delivery personally. Security detail is on standby. Any aggressive movement will be met with non-lethal response. David's pulse quickened. Elena Vance, the Elena Vance, reclusive architect of the world's most advanced neural networks, the woman whose face appeared on every financial broadcast, yet her personal life remained a locked vault. He had seen her in grainy paparazzi shots, sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled into an impeccable chignon, eyes that seemed to calculate probabilities even in stillness. The idea of handing her a pepperoni supreme felt absurd, almost insulting. Yet the doors were already parting with a soft hydraulic hiss, spilling warm amber light into the corridor. David took a steadying breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped through, worn sneakers silent on the heated marble, pizza box warm against his chest, carrying him unwittingly into the eye of a storm he could never have foreseen. The double doors closed behind David with a soft, final click, sealing him inside Elena Vance's private sanctum on the 87th floor. The room was vast, yet deliberately sparse, a study in controlled minimalism that made every object feel deliberate and expensive. Walls of seamless smoked glass framed the glittering sprawl of New Seattle far below, where rain traced silver veins across the city's arteries of light. Overhead, faint constellations of holographic data streams drifted like lazy fireflies. Stock tickers, neural network diagnostics, encrypted satellite feeds, casting shifting blue-white patterns across the polished titanium floor. The air carried the faint metallic tang of ionized electronics, mixed with something warmer, almost imperceptible. Real cedar, perhaps, or the ghost of expensive perfume. At the center stood the desk, a single massive slab of brushed metal so thin it seemed to float above its invisible supports. No clutter marred its surface, except for the pizza box David now set down with exaggerated care, as though the slightest noise might shatter the spell of the place. He straightened, wiping damp palms on his uniform pants, and allowed his gaze to wander, anything to steady the sudden tightness in his chest. A low console hummed quietly to one side, displaying cascading lines of code in elegant sans serif font. Opposite it, a narrow shelf held only 3 items: a matte black quantum drive, the size of a deck of cards, a single orchid in a crystal vial, and then, impossibly, a small silver picture frame. It was the only object in the room that looked touched by human hands rather than engineered into existence. The frame was simple, almost antique in its plainness, no holographic projection or embedded screen, just cold metal and glass protecting a physical photograph. David's breath caught before his mind could catch up. The girl in the picture was perhaps 5 years old, sitting cross-legged on sunlit grass, head tilted back in laughter. Her dark curls spilled over bare shoulders, and her eyes, wide, hazel, lit from within, sparked with the same unguarded joy David had once photographed on lazy Saturday mornings in their tiny backyard. A small crescent-shaped birthmark curved just above her left wrist, visible where she held a dandelion puff toward the camera. Lily. His Lily. The same dimple in her left cheek, the same slightly crooked front tooth that had never quite straightened after she lost the baby one too early. 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days since she vanished from the playground behind their apartment complex during one of the worst custody disputes of his life. Gone in the space of a single phone call to the police, a single inconclusive security feed, a single lifetime of grief that followed. Missing persons posters had yellowed and peeled from telephone poles long ago. The case had gone cold. David had learned to live with the hollow place inside him, to function around it like a man walking with a missing limb. Now that hollow place roared back to life. His knees buckled. He caught himself against the edge of the desk, knuckles whitening, the insulated pizza carrier forgotten beside the frame. The photograph stared up at him, unchanged, innocent, impossible. 1,000 questions collided in his skull. How? Who? Why? But none made it past his lips. Instead, a low, broken sound escaped him, half sob, half disbelief. He reached out, fingers trembling, and brushed the glass as though he could reach through time itself to touch her cheek again. The surface was cool, real, not some cruel, deep-fake hologram. The photo paper even had the faint texture of old chemical prints, the kind he used to get developed at the corner drugstore when Lily was small. Footsteps, sharp, measured, approached from the corridor beyond another set of frosted panels. David didn't turn. He couldn't tear his eyes from the frame. The panels parted, and Elena Vance entered without preamble. She was smaller than the media images suggested, yet her presence filled the room like a sudden pressure drop before a storm. Dark hair swept back in a severe knot, charcoal suit tailored to razor precision, eyes the color of winter slate assessing him in a single sweep. She stopped 3 paces away, arms folded, expression unreadable. "You're still here," she said, voice low and clipped, not a question. David's throat worked. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded foreign, raw. "That's my daughter." Elena's gaze flicked to the photograph, then back to him. Something passed behind her eyes. Calculation, perhaps, or the faintest flicker of surprise. Gone so quickly he might have imagined it. "You're mistaken. That is a private family image. You've delivered the order. Leave." He shook his head, slow, deliberate. "Her name is Lily. She has a crescent birthmark on her left wrist. Right there." He pointed without touching the frame. "She got it caught on a rose bush when she was 3. The scar is still there, faint but shaped exactly like that. I know every inch of her face. That's my daughter." For the first time, Elena's composure cracked, just a hairline fracture. Her jaw tightened, lips pressing into a thin line. The holographic streams above them seemed to dim, as though the room itself held its breath. Security had not yet arrived, but David could feel the invisible weight of drones and protocols converging somewhere beyond the walls. "Get out," Elena repeated, quieter now, almost a warning. David met her gaze, tears burning tracks down his cheeks, voice steady for years. "Not without my daughter." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with the gravity of secrets long buried and the sudden violent collision of 2 carefully constructed lives. Outside, rain continued to fall on the city that never noticed, while inside the glass tower, on a single titanium desk, a photograph waited to unravel everything. The silence stretched taut between them, a wire pulled to breaking. Elena Vance stood motionless, her arms still crossed like armor plating, but the faint tremor in her fingertips betrayed the fracture David had just driven through her composure. The holographic data streams overhead slowed their lazy orbit, as though even the algorithms sensed the shift in atmospheric pressure. Rain tapped insistently against the floor-to-ceiling windows, a steady metronome counting the seconds neither of them spoke. David's chest heaved, tears carved clean tracks through the grime of the night's deliveries on his cheeks, but his eyes never left hers. He had nothing left to lose. 3 years of searching, of police reports that went nowhere, of nights spent staring at an empty bedroom door. He had carried that weight until it became bone. Now the weight had a name again, Lily, and she was here, somewhere in this glittering prison of glass and secrets. Elena exhaled through her nose, a controlled sound that might have been impatience or something far more dangerous. "You are trespassing," she said, each word measured as though carved from ice. "You have made an extraordinary and unfounded accusation based on a photograph that belongs to me. Security has already been alerted. They will escort you out, quietly if you cooperate. Make a scene, and the charges will be far more serious than simple unauthorized access." She lifted her left wrist slightly. A thin silver band glowed once, confirming the silent summons. David could almost hear the soft whine of approaching drones in the corridors beyond. He didn't move. "You can call every guard in the building," he said, voice rough but steady. "You can have me arrested, sued, disappeared, but you can't make me unsee what I just saw. That birthmark, the way her left eyebrow quirks higher when she smiles. I held her the day she was born. I kissed that scar when she cried about the rose thorns. You can lie to the world, Elena Vance, but you can't lie to me about my own child." Her jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped beneath the skin. For an instant, the mask slipped completely. Something raw and unguarded flashed across her features. Not anger, not exactly, but the look of someone watching a long-buried fault line finally give way. Then the mask snapped back into place, colder than before. "Emotional outbursts do not constitute evidence," she said. "People see what they want to see. Grief is a powerful hallucinogen. I suggest you leave before you embarrass yourself further." David took one step closer to the desk, not threatening, just refusing to retreat. "Then explain it," he said. "Explain why a woman who hasn't been photographed with family in a decade keeps a single old-fashioned picture of a little girl who looks exactly like the daughter I lost 3 years ago. Explain why that picture isn't digital, isn't networked, isn't indexed in any public record. Explain why you're alone up here at 1 in the morning instead of surrounded by the usual entourage. You don't strike me as sentimental, Miss Vance. So what is this?" Elena's gaze darted, once, very briefly, to a narrow panel set into the wall behind the desk, almost invisible against the dark glass. The movement was so quick David might have missed it if he hadn't been watching for any crack. She recovered instantly, but the damage was done. "This conversation is over," she said, and raised her wrist again. "Security, expedite response to penthouse executive suite. Non-compliant individual. Use minimal force." The panel behind her slid open with a whisper of pneumatics before she finished the command. No drones appeared, no armored guards. Instead, a soft chime sounded from concealed speakers, followed by a calm synthetic voice. "Override acknowledged. Human security dispatched. ETA 30 seconds. David's heart hammered against his ribs. He glanced at the photograph again, Lily's smile frozen in sunlight, and felt something fierce and protective rise in him, drowning the fear. "You're stalling," he said quietly. "You could have had me out of here already. You're buying time. Why?" Elena's eyes narrowed, calculating. For the first time since he'd entered the room, she looked at him, not as an intruder, not as a delivery driver, but as a variable in an equation she hadn't anticipated. "You really believe she's yours," she said almost to herself. "I know she is." Another beat of silence. Then, so softly he almost missed it. "The birthmark is on the inside of her left wrist, not the outside." David froze. "What?" Elena's expression remained unreadable, but her voice dropped to something close to a whisper. "The rose thorn caught her on the soft skin just below the palm. The scar curves inward like a shallow sea, not a crescent moon on the top like you described." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But you remembered it wrong. Grief does that. It rewrites details until they hurt less." David's mouth dried. He stared at the photograph, forcing himself to look, really look at the tiny mark visible where Lily's arm bent. The scar was there, faint silver against olive skin, curving inward exactly as Elena had said. His knees threatened to give again. "Then, how do you know that?" he rasped. Elena didn't answer immediately. She glanced once more at the hidden panel, then back at him. "Because I've watched her every day for 3 years. I know every scar, every freckle, every nightmare she wakes crying for a father she believes is gone." Her voice cracked on the last word, the smallest fracture 3 years of iron control. "And I put her there to keep her alive." The words landed like a physical blow. David opened his mouth, closed it, unable to form a coherent question. Outside, the distant sound of elevator doors hissed open. Boots echoed in the corridor. Time was running out. Elena stepped sideways, positioning herself between David and the photograph, as though to shield it or him from what came next. "You have 10 seconds to decide," she said, low and urgent. "Walk away now, and this ends here. No record, no charges. Or stay, and I show you the truth. But once that door opens," she nodded toward the approaching footsteps, "there's no going back for either of us." David looked at the frame one last time. Lily's eyes seemed to meet him across the impossible distance of years and lies. He straightened, wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, and met Elena's gaze without flinching. "Show me," he said. The hidden panel slid open with a near-silent hiss, revealing a narrow corridor lit by warm, recessed strips rather than the cold blue of the executive floor. Elena did not invite David forward with words. She simply turned and stepped through, her heels clicking once on the threshold before softening on thick carpet beyond. David followed without hesitation, the photograph of Lily still burning behind his eyes like an afterimage. The corridor was short, perhaps 15 paces, yet it felt like crossing into another world. The sterile corporate sheen gave way to something intimate, lived in. Walls paneled in pale walnut, a faint scent of lavender and vanilla lingering in the air, the low murmur of a white noise generator masking the distant hum of the city below. No security cameras blinked here, no drones hovered. This was not an extension of the empire. It was a sanctuary carved out of it. Elena paused at the end of the passage and pressed her palm to an unmarked plate. A soft click, then a second set of doors parted to reveal a spacious living area that defied every expectation of the reclusive billionaire. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the rain-washed skyline, but heavy automated drapes were half-drawn, diffusing the neon glow into gentle amber pools. A low sectional sofa curved around a glass coffee table scattered with children's books, dog-eared copies of The Secret Garden, and a worn volume of Greek myths. A child-sized easel stood in one corner, bright watercolor streaks drying on heavy paper. A house with too many windows, a stick figure man holding hands with a smaller figure under a lopsided sun. Toys were neatly contained in woven baskets, yet the room carried the unmistakable evidence of recent play. A single purple crayon rolling lazily across the rug, a half-finished puzzle of the solar system missing only Jupiter. David's throat closed. This was not a guest suite or a corporate perk. This was a home. Elena crossed to a sleek sideboard, poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher, and set one on the low table without offering it. She did not sit. 3 years ago, she began, voice quieter than it had been in the office, almost conversational. Your ex-wife contacted me. Not directly. She used intermediaries, encrypted channels, people who owed me favors. She claimed your former business partner, Marcus Hale, was planning to use Lily as leverage. Hale had been embezzling from Vance Tech subsidiaries for years. When I started closing in, he panicked. He threatened to expose proprietary neural algorithms unless I backed off. Then he escalated. He told your ex-wife he would take Lily if the investigation didn't stop. She believed him. She had reason to. David remained standing near the doorway, arms loose at his sides, every muscle coiled. My ex-wife disappeared the same week Lily did. The police said she ran. New identity, cash withdrawal, no trace. They assumed she took my daughter to keep her from me. Elena's gaze met his, unflinching. She didn't take her. She gave her to me. I arranged the extraction. Private medical transport disguised as an ambulance, falsified records, a new identity package. Lily was moved here within hours. I've kept her off every grid since. No school enrollment under her real name, no digital footprint, private tutors, biometric shielding on this entire floor. Hale was dangerous, but he wasn't the only threat. Once he realized the child was gone, he turned his attention to anyone who might have helped her vanish. Your ex-wife paid the highest price. She was found 3 months later in a motel outside Reno. Official report said overdose. It wasn't. David felt the floor tilt beneath him. He braced a hand against the wall. You're saying you kidnapped my daughter to protect her from a man I barely knew anymore, and you never told me? You let me think she was dead, or taken, or... I let the world think she was gone so no one would look for her here, Elena cut in. Sharp but not cruel. Including you. If you'd known, if anyone had seen even a hint of contact between us, Hale would have followed the thread straight to this tower. I monitored you. I knew you were searching. I made sure the trail stayed cold. But I also made sure Lily was safe, loved, educated. She asks about you every night. She still believes you're coming back one day. A small sound came from the adjoining hallway, a soft footfall, the creak of a door. David turned. A girl of 8 stood there in pale blue pajamas, dark curls tousled from sleep, clutching a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. Her eyes, his eyes, widened as they locked on him. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Lily whispered, barely audible, "Daddy?" The word shattered everything. Elena stepped aside, no longer blocking the path. Her face was unreadable, but her hands trembled at her sides. David took one step, then another,
knees threatening to buckle. Lily didn't run. She walked toward him slowly, as though the vision might dissolve if she moved too fast. When she reached him, she lifted her arms. David dropped to his knees and gathered her close, burying his face in her hair. She smelled of lavender shampoo and warm sleep and everything he had lost. Her small hands patted his back the way she used to when he was sad. "I knew you would find me," she murmured against his shoulder. "I told Elena you would." David looked up over Lily's head at the woman who had both stolen her daughter and saved her. Elena stood apart, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the rain-streaked window as though the city lights held answers she no longer trusted herself to find. "You kept her alive, but you kept her from me." "I know," Elena answered simply. "And now the choice is yours. Take her tonight. Walk out of here with her. No questions, no records. I'll handle the fallout. Or stay long enough for me to dismantle the last of Hale's network so no one ever threatens her again. But either way, the secret ends here, tonight." Lily tightened her arms around David's neck. Outside, the storm had quieted to a gentle patter. Inside the hidden quarters of the glass tower, 3 fractured lives waited for one of them to decide what came next.
The moment Lily whispered, "Daddy," the hidden living quarters seemed to contract around them, the vast city lights beyond the windows blurring into insignificance. David remained on his knees, arms encircling his daughter as though she might vanish again if he loosened his hold even slightly. Her small frame fit against his chest the way it always had, perfectly, impossibly. Her heart beat a rapid flutter against his ribs, matching the frantic rhythm of his own. Lily pulled back just enough to cup his face in both hands, thumbs brushing the wet tracks on his cheeks with the solemn concentration of a child who had practiced this reunion in countless bedtime imaginings. "You grew a beard," she said seriously, tracing the stubble along his jaw. "It's scratchy, but I like it." A tiny smile broke through, the same crooked dimple flashing, and David laughed, a raw, broken sound that dissolved into something softer, something healing. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in. Lavender shampoo, the faint sweetness of the strawberry lip balm she must have sneaked before bed, the warm, alive scent of her that no photograph could ever capture. Elena stood several paces away, motionless, her arms still wrapped tightly around herself as though holding her own pieces together. The woman who had commanded boardrooms and rewritten the rules of artificial intelligence now looked smaller, almost fragile in the soft lamplight. Her eyes remained fixed on the rain-streaked glass, but she was watching them in the reflection, father and daughter locked in an embrace that excluded her, yet had been made possible only by her choices. She had prepared for this moment in theory, contingency plans, legal documents drafted in encrypted files, quiet arrangements with trusted attorneys who owed her more than favors. Yet theory had not accounted for the visceral ache of seeing Lily's arms around another person, or the way the child's entire body relaxed into safety the instant she recognized her father. Elena had told herself the separation was temporary, necessary, a calculated sacrifice. Watching it end now felt like amputating a limb she had never admitted was hers. Lily turned her head without releasing David, looking back at the woman who had raised her for 3 years. "Elena?" Her voice was small but steady. "Is it okay now? Can he stay?" The question hung fragile in the air, carrying the weight of every bedtime story Elena had told about brave fathers who always came back, every careful evasion when Lily asked why they couldn't call him, every night the child had cried herself to sleep clutching the one photograph Elena had allowed her to keep hidden under her pillow, a snapshot of David laughing on a park bench, taken before everything fractured. Elena drew a slow breath, then crossed the room in measured steps. She knelt beside them, not close enough to intrude, but near enough that Lily could reach out and touch her sleeve if she wanted. "Yes," Elena said quietly, "it's okay now." She looked at David over Lily's head. "I have already initiated the necessary overrides. False records will be corrected starting tonight, birth certificate reissued, missing persons file closed as resolved, custody documentation transferred to reflect biological paternity. There will be questions, media scrutiny, perhaps investigations into how a child vanished and reappeared under my roof. I will handle them. Full disclosure, no NDAs, no cover stories. If charges are filed, kidnapping, obstruction, conspiracy, I will face them. You and Lily walk away clean."
David searched her face, looking for the calculation that had defined her in every public appearance he had ever seen. It was still there, the razor-sharp mind that never stopped assessing risk, but layered beneath it now was something unguarded. Regret, yes, but also relief, and a quiet, almost maternal protectiveness that had nothing to do with power. "You could have kept her," David said. "Forever. No one would have known." "I thought about it," Elena admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Every day for the first year I told myself one more month, one more year until the threats were neutralized. But she asked for you. She never stopped asking. And I realized keeping her safe meant more than hiding her. It meant giving her back what I had taken." She reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew a slim data card, no larger than a credit card. "Everything is here. Medical records, schoolwork samples, psychological evaluations from the private therapists, proof she was never harmed, proof she was loved." She placed it in David's open palm. "Take it, use it however you need." Lily leaned forward suddenly, wrapping one arm around Elena's neck in a fierce, clumsy hug. "Don't be sad," she murmured. "You can visit, right, Daddy?" She looked at David with absolute trust, as though the future was already written and included all three of them in some impossible patched-together family portrait. David swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yeah," he said, voice thick, "she can visit." He met Elena's eyes again. "We'll figure it out. Together. No more secrets." For the first time since he had entered the glass tower, Elena allowed herself a small, genuine smile, tentative, almost shy. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed clean and glittering under clearing skies. Inside, three people who had each carried unbearable weights began slowly to set them down. The rain had finally ceased, leaving the city draped in a rare, crystalline quiet as David and Lily stepped out of the private service elevator on the ground floor of the glass tower. The lobby, once an intimidating expanse of black marble and hovering security orbs, now felt strangely diminished, its grandeur reduced to backdrop for the small miracle unfolding within it. Lily's hand was warm and firm in David's, her fingers laced through his with the easy trust of someone who had never doubted he would return. She wore the same pale blue pajamas under a hastily zipped child-sized raincoat Elena had pulled from a closet, the hood slipping back to reveal dark curls still mussed from sleep. In her other arm she clutched the one-eared rabbit, its fur worn thin from years of being held through nightmares David hadn't been there to soothe. He carried nothing else, no pizza delivery bag, no insulated carrier, no trace of the life he had walked in with 3 hours earlier. The bag still sat abandoned on the titanium desk 87 floors above, a crumpled red and white relic symbolizing the end of endless night shifts, the end of surviving on scraps and memories. They paused just inside the revolving doors while a discreet security officer, human this time, not drone, scanned them out with a soft chime of clearance. No handcuffs, no questions, no flashing lights. Elena's final override had worked as promised. Every system log rewritten, every camera feed looped with innocuous footage of an uneventful delivery handoff. Outside, the streets glistened under sodium lamps, and the first hints of dawn creeping over the eastern skyline. David's scooter waited where he had left it, chained to the same post, looking smaller and more ordinary than he remembered. He unlocked it with numb fingers, then looked down at Lily. "Think you can ride on the back?" he asked, voice still rough from crying. She nodded solemnly. "I'm big now. I can hold on tight." He lifted her onto the narrow rear seat, wrapped her arms around his waist, and secured the too large raincoat hood with gentle tugs. The scooter hummed to life on its first try, battery indicator glowing a healthy green, another small mercy in a night already overflowing with them. As they pulled away from the curb, Lily rested her cheek against his back, the rabbit squished between them. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice muffled by fabric and wind. "Home," David answered, though the word felt new, fragile, like something he had to earn all over again. "Our home. It's not fancy like up there, but there's a room that's been waiting for you. I never took the posters down." They rode in companionable silence through streets slowly waking to morning traffic. Delivery drones zipped overhead, early commuters hurried toward transit hubs, and the city exhaled the last of its nighttime tension. David kept to quieter avenues, avoiding the main arteries where news vans might already be stirring if Elena's promised disclosures had begun to leak. He didn't know what headlines would greet the world in a few hours. Billionaire CEO admits to hiding missing child in protection scheme, or something far more sensational, but none of it mattered in this moment. The only headline that counted was the small arms around his middle, the steady breathing against his spine. They reached the East Side apartment complex just as the sky turned the soft rose of false dawn. The building was the same faded brick monolith it had always been, graffiti tags half scrubbed from the entrance, security camera dangling by wires above the buzzer. David parked the scooter in its usual spot, lifted Lily down, and led her up the cracked concrete stairs to the third floor. His key stuck in the lock the way it always did. He jiggled it with practiced patience until the tumblers gave. The door opened to familiar dimness, the narrow hallway lined with unopened mail, the living room still cluttered with takeout containers and the ghost of his old life. But the bedroom door at the end of the hall stood ajar, spilling soft yellow light from the lamp he always left burning, like a beacon, like a promise kept even when hope had run dry. Lily stepped inside first. She stopped in the doorway, eyes wide. The room was exactly as she had left it at 5 years old, purple walls fading to lavender at the edges, glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck crookedly across the ceiling, the twin bed with its faded unicorn comforter. A shelf held the books they used to read together, spines cracked from countless readings. On the dresser sat the last school photo she had taken before everything changed, 5-year-old Lily grinning with missing front teeth. She walked to it slowly, touched the frame with reverent fingers. "You kept everything," she whispered. David knelt beside her. "I couldn't let it go, not any of it." She turned and wrapped her arms around his neck again, hugging him so tightly he felt her heartbeat sync with his own. "I'm home now," she said simply. Outside, the first true light of morning crept through the blinds, painting stripes of gold across the worn carpet. David held his daughter close, feeling the pieces of himself that had been missing for 3 years finally slot back into place. Not perfectly, not without scars, but enough to begin again. Somewhere high above the city, in a penthouse office, Elena Vance would face the consequences of her choices: press conferences, legal depositions, perhaps even prison. Yet she had given them this: a quiet dawn, a second chance, a family reclaimed against every odd stacked against it. The pizza bag remained on her desk, forgotten, a small monument to the night power bent to the will of love. David kissed the top of Lily's head. "Let's get some sleep," he murmured. "Tomorrow we start fresh." And as the city stirred below, father and daughter curled together on the small bed, the weight of years lifting at last, carried away on the gentle tide of a new beginning.
If this heart-wrenching story of family, power, and redemption touched you, hit that like button, subscribe to Drew Daily Stories for more captivating tales every day, and drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. What would you do in David's shoes? Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.